Good morning. It's Detroit's biggest day on four wheels. Our love of the automotive industry on full display. Inside the Chevy Detroit Belle Isle Grand Prix presented by Lear. Our guests, Bud Dinker, Jim Campbell, Max Chilton, and Ed Carpenter. It's Sunday, June the 3rd. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is a Spotlight on the News Grand Prix special. Bud Dinker, welcome back to Spotlight and Grand Prix. It's on us.
Chuck, it's great to be back again and being with you this morning. It must be the Grand Prix is happening this afternoon.
Well, and we got the sun out here, so we're all good. Are you ready?
Well, we've had a great weekend so far, and we're going to have a fabulous weekend, fabulous day today as well too. As we see the Indy cars competing today, the Stadium Super Trucks competing, and the Trans Am Series. So 3 races to come. And islands never look better, the cities never look better, and we're so happy to have this event back on Belle Isle.
And getting it ready is always a challenge because there's so many different things to do, and you put a little extra pressure on yourself this year, and you decided to do it in 7 days less time.
Well, we did. You know, we've listened to some people that weren't happy about having the race on Belle Isle. Of course, it's a public land, and we understand that. So there needs to be some balance and some compromise. And we listened to the folks that you know, were disenchanted by having the race there and by having the load in and load out over a period of time. And we reduced it, as you said, by 7 days this year. And on top of that, we also kept Central Avenue open through Memorial Day weekend to have less congestion on the island. And we also had the perimeter of the island where we have barrier walls by the water. We kept those open 3 weeks later. So it's cost us more money to do that. It's been less disruptive on the people that come to the island. So it's all a balance, and we're happy to strike that balance.
The economic benefits are hugely important to this region. Talk a little bit about that. What does that mean in terms of dollars and cents for this region, and how does that translate to help the books?
Well, you know, big events are so important to our city. There's reasons why you bring Super Bowl, why you bring the Final Four, why you bring the All-Star Game, and why you bring the Grand Prix to our city, right? It brings people downtown, it brings people to our city, it brings people to our state, but it also creates jobs. Okay, over 1,000 people are working this weekend on Belle Isle. They're employed, getting a paycheck, paying taxes as well as that. So the revenue stream is important as well too. And the people in our hotels, in the bars, in the casinos that are downtown as a result of our event is all part of the equation of success. So millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars are spent this weekend, remain in Detroit because of having the event here. So big events are important for our city, and the Grand Prix is a big event.
And one of the byproducts is the improvements that you've made over a number of years to Belle Isle. You tweak that every year, and you add some things every year. What's improved upon this year that maybe wasn't there last year that the public should know about?
Well, it's a great point. That's the reason why Roger brought racing back to Detroit 2007 after the Super Bowl, because Belle Isle needed a lot of help. Okay, it wasn't safe, it wasn't clean. It was a harbinger for people that had, you know, some bad ideas down there. And the first thing we want to do is clean it up and make the infrastructure right. So we got the Scott Fountain running again in 2007. And by the way,
what a beautiful fountain.
The Scott Fountain is running again because of DTE's support to the Grand Prix. Can you imagine that fountain not running all summer long if the Grand Prix were not here? That's a possibility. So that's an iconic figure, the Scott Fountain, and is running now in the park because of the Grand Prix being here and the help of DTE support.
Well, this is an event that gets national, international exposure, and coming out of the bankruptcy, which everybody got tremendous publicity, but now everybody's talking about we're the comeback city, and to be able to have this picture postcard of this is the new Detroit.
Yes, it is. It is a new Detroit, Chuck, and we're part of the new Detroit here. I mean, the investments that Roger and Penske Corporation have made, from whether it be light rail or the DDP, the 100 police cars and the 23 MS units that we're called on to invest in the city. This is one more investment that we're making in Belle Isle because it's part of the revitalization. You know, people want to come here to work, they want to live, and they want to play. We've given them a great playground here on Belle Isle this weekend for people to come across our state from outside the country and from Canada. 10% of the visitors this weekend will be from Canada. That's a big deal as well too. So those are all ingredients to make this event, which is why we're on Belle Isle, which is why we're in Detroit, which is why we're still the motorcycle capital of the world.
Talk a little bit about this partner equation and how that has blended together to make this such a big success.
Well, we couldn't do it on our own, Chuck. It's a great point. And there are 73 corporate partners that are involved in the Grand Prix this year, 11 new ones this year as well. So Those 73 companies, including Lear, who's now on board the second year as our presenting sponsor, and of course General Motors and Cadillac and Chevrolet, those are the key partners that make it happen for it. But also it's the banks, the PNC, the Huntington Banks, the Fifth Thirds, they're all partners here as well. Comerica gave us Comerica free days. So people came down here on Friday for free, brought their kids, brought their school children down here. The schools are all here helping in STEM initiatives as well too. So, you know, the partnerships are important, not just the corporate partnerships, but also the school systems that are here, DPS schools, the charter schools that we're involved in. Those put a smile on my face when I see kids walking around the paddock area, learning about geometry, learning about mathematics, learning about science. I hope I put a spark in a few people's minds that want to get involved in those STEM initiatives. Why not be part of Team Penske in the future?
And STEM has become huge. We just had the robotic competition here, got world attention the first time in the Motor City. So all of this just sort of feeds into from one event to the next event.
It really does. I mean, we're so lucky to have the robotics event this past month that has got a 3-year contract here. I understand it brought 40,000 people to our city.
That's what I hear.
And these are students that are interested in science and math. And they may be students for these companies to employ in future years and to go to our universities as well. These kids are all around the world and see this great city of ours, and it's this great light, and want to come back and be part of our, hopefully, our university systems in the future and companies that are here. So it's all part of the linkage together, the puzzle of, once again, work, be entertained, live, you know, all part of our city. What
is it that makes Team Penske so special and has had such great success in motor car racing?
Good question. I would tie it back to what Roger calls as human capital. You know, we have 59,000 people now that work for our company, 59,000. 500 of them work for our race teams, but it's the people that make the difference. You can go buy a Ford, a Chrysler, or a Chevrolet at any dealership in America. What makes the difference is the people when you walk in that showroom, isn't it? That makes the difference. The cars are the same. Right. It's the people. Same thing for us. Our race teams have hundreds and hundreds of years of experience. I think we brought over 300 years of experience to the Indy 500 this year and to Belle Isle this year with experienced people on our race team. So the difference for us is the people, but then it's the other things that are all about who we are, our culture, attention to detail, right? Integrity, honesty, credibility, right? Preparation, innovation. Here's another thing that's important. In a good year, we'll win about 18% of the races, meaning we'll lose 82% of the time. Wow. So we learn a lot more from losing than we do from winning.
Interesting way of putting it, yeah.
Right. So what you learn from losing and adversity is also how we transfer that to our businesses around the world, and they transfer it back to our race team. So it's built our brand, it's brought in our partners, and for us it's built a lot of great people, no more so than our race teams here in Team Penske.
Bud Dinker, final question. This is the final year of the contract, so you're in that renegotiation period. There's not any chance whatsoever that this Belle Isle Chevy Grand Prix isn't going to stay right here.
Well, our hope is to come back here for years to come. We haven't presented a proposal to the DNR yet. Our contract is up with the DNR this year. They assumed the contract from the city when they took over Belle Isle Park, and they have done a tremendous job, as well as the Conservancy that Michelle Hodges leads, in making Belle Isle a better place. So we'll be in discussions with them in June. Hopefully have a decision by July what our intentions are, but Chuck, our hope is to be here next year and years to come.
All right, Bud Dinker, thanks so much for joining us. Always a pleasure sitting down and talking to you, and best of luck today.
Thanks, Chuck, for having me here.
All right. Coming up on our Spotlight Grand Prix special, Jim Campbell, General Motors Vice President of Motorsports. We'll be right back. Okay, we've had an exciting weekend so far of racing. We're down to the final day, the big day. The biggest of the big days, I should say.
We love the event, and it's a great way to showcase our cars and our propulsion systems on track.
Right, and the branding is so important because while it's important for the racing, it's also important to just that average person out there that is trying to decide, am I going to buy a Chevy? Am I going to buy a Cadillac? Am I going to buy a GM? What am I going to get out of all the different selections I have?
Yeah, there's no question. Well, here on the island, we have really incredible displays of Chevrolet cars and crossovers and trucks. We have our parts and accessories, our crate engines. And Cadillac has its entire lineup here, including all of its V-Series. So a great way for the fans to discover what's going on new at Chevrolet and Cadillac and our company. We have all of our experts here to answer their questions. Then, of course, we had to wrap the Rensen with the Chevrolet bow tie. And what's interesting about that is these races this weekend have been getting tremendous coverage on all the TV stations that are covering the races. And those images of the racetrack, our headquarters, Belle Isle, the river, it's an awesome image that goes around the world. Many people around the world are going to watch this race, and it's really exciting for us at Chevrolet and Cadillac and for Detroit.
And it certainly helps the image of Detroit coming out of the bankruptcy. A lot of people have had stereotypical impressions about Detroit, but so many now are hearing about the comeback story, the comeback city, and this feeds right into that.
Oh, it's great. You know, when we're recruiting new employees, you know, coming to Detroit is really exciting. There's something magical happening at Detroit, in Detroit, living downtown, all the things you can do on the weekends and after work, and then working at places like our company. So it's actually a recruiting tool, and we love that. And then to have a big event like the Grand Prix, Chevrolet and Cadillac both being involved, is really important to us. Big iconic events, world-class racing. We have the best drivers from around the world in IndyCar racing here this weekend. They've raced at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. They're champions in their own right in the past, and they're racing here this weekend. And Cadillac has some of the very, very best sports car drivers that raced yesterday as well. So having world-class racing, the best drivers in the world right here, it's a big event for Detroit, a big event for our company.
If you could look into your crystal ball and say, what does this mean to the future of racing? What does it mean to the future of Chevy in terms of the product that we put out there for the consumers? What do you think? Where are we headed?
Well, what I would say is we're learning so much around our propulsion system technologies. In IndyCar, for example, we use a small displacement engine, 2.2 liters. We use direct injection, and we use boosting or turbocharging. So we learn in this intense racing environment, and those learnings we drive right into the propulsion applications and technologies for our showroom engines and propulsion systems. And so we can continue to get more efficiency out of internal combustion engines, and those are technologies we're learning so much about to deliver a great combination of power, durability, and efficiency. A winning combination on the track, a winning combination in the showroom.
Jim Campbell, is there anything more American than cars and racing and Chevy?
We love racing at Chevy, love it at Cadillac, and we love racing here in Detroit.
Jim Campbell, thank you so much. And when Spotlight returns, we'll sit down with race car driver Max Children. Max, this is what you live for, racing. You love it. You've done this course, what, 4 times before?
This is my 3rd year back.
3rd year back, okay. Talk a little bit about this course and how it compares to Indy and some of the other courses, and what you like and dislike about this course.
Yeah, so coming here from Indianapolis, which is the fastest racetrack in the world, the fastest racetrack on our schedule, and being there for basically the month of May, it's a nice break to then come to a street circuit where you're turning left, you're turning right, you've got bumps, you've got 2 races on consecutive days. You know, Indianapolis is very small turning of the wheel, and it's a big build-up over a number of weeks. So coming to Detroit is a breeze of fresh air. Belle Isle is a fantastic place, so it's great to be back here. And yeah, I've always enjoyed the racing there.
How do you prepare differently for the Chevy Belle Isle race course versus some of the others?
So we focus extra hard on Indianapolis and the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle because this is the home of Chevrolet, and it's a double header. So we want to make sure we try and have 2 Chevrolets win. And so that's our main focus. So we do simulation, which is basically posh computer games, basically focusing on learning your braking points, your gearing changes, setup work. So when we come here, we know what setup to run. We get very little practice because it's a double header. So you've basically got to be prepared coming into practice that you've got to be ready for qualifying straight away.
A lot of talk this year about the simulator. How closely does that simulator compare to the real world of driving?
Yeah, so simulators in motorsport are key. It's not like golf or cricket or tennis where they can just go out anywhere and practice for 6 hours. With motorsport, the cars have to be driven all over American trucks with teams of 80 people being flown around. So it's very expensive and you get very little test days in the year. So simulators you can be on all day long, every day. And so we focus on spending as much time as we can on simulators to learn all those inputs that we will get when we come to Belle Isle. Where the braking points are, all the visuals, so we know where the bridges are or where the shadows might occur in the afternoon where we might miss a braking point. It's all these things you can focus on a simulator.
It has been said that race car drivers are some of the greatest athletes in the world. You use the entire body and the quickness in which you have to do everything. What is it that you love so much about this sport?
Yeah, so motorsport is very unique. As I said earlier, we very rarely get to practice, but our skills are so honed. It's all about reaction times. And if we're driving around the track at 240 miles an hour and the car starts to wobble, we've got to correct that basically at 240 miles an hour. Your reactions have to be just as quick. And so we are athletes. I know a lot of people think, really, we're not really moving a great deal when we're strapped in, but just moving this amount, braking, especially on Belle Isle, where you brake heavily 5 or 6 times a lap, you put all your force into your braking leg. You've then got the concentration, you've got the heat, you've got 5 layers of thermal underwear, so you get very hot, and then the race is gone for 2 hours, and in a street circuit you get very little fresh air. So all of that combined, our heart rates are up at 170, 180 beats per minute for 2 hours.
You've got a new company now. What's your hope and aspiration?
Yeah, so I'm now racing for Team Carlin. It's a British team. It's the first British team back to IndyCar for the full championship since McLaren and Lotus, and we're having a really good time. We just qualified both cars last weekend for the top 20 in the Indianapolis 500, and we're now coming into Detroit trying to do better.
And with Spotlight returns, we'll sit down with race car driver Ed Carpenter. We hope you stay with us.
There's a lot of variables, a lot of things to take into account at this racetrack.
There are a lot of people who sit home, look at their TV screen and say, why in the world would anybody want to do that or even put themselves in a position to be able to do that? But if there's a young person who's thinking, this might be a profession for me, what would you say to them related to your own experience and what drove you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, most people that are racing at this level had some connection or some passion for the sport. It's definitely something that you've got to love to do. It's a hard sport. It can be a grind to get here, to make it to the top. But it's something that a lot of drivers have proven along the way that if you work hard and put in the time, you can get there. But go-karts are probably the best way to get started. There's go-kart tracks all over the country. You can start as young as 5. Most of us here have started between the ages of 5 and 12, 13. So it's definitely something that is harder to get into, once you get a little further in life, just because it's hard to catch up when you're competing against guys that have started at such a young age. You can't overcome that lack of experience because it is a craft that you have to work at. I do think there's a certain element of it that is natural. You have to have the mindset of wanting to drive a car to the limit of its capabilities and not be totally worried about the risks that come with our sport, because it is a risky sport. But for all of us drivers, it's something that we love to do, and the reward far outweighs the risk, and that's why we race.
You have the professional race car experience, but you've added something else to that. You're also an owner. Talk about that experience and the difference between the two.
Yeah, it's for sure a unique experience. I'm the only owner driver in the IndyCar series right now. Certainly not the first one. I think pretty much all the owners here now drove at some point in their career. But it's a fun experience. For me, I'm one of the few drivers that has a college education. I graduated from Butler University in 2003.
Indiana.
And I think, and then that experience of going to school, I was racing full time while I was in college. So I feel like that experience really set me up, because during that time of my life I was focusing on school and being, keeping up with my classwork and also being prepared to drive and race. And it was a different type of dual role, but it served me well now that I'm an owner driver, because you really have to manage your time, compartmentalize what you're focusing on. When it's time for me to drive, that requires and deserves 100% of my attention. And when it's time to focus on the business and the team side of things, that requires and deserves 100% of my time. But I do think it's helpful having the experience and the point of view of both sides of it. I think there's parts of being an owner that's kind of helped me be a better driver even at this later point in my career. Mm-hmm. And having the driver's perspective has helped me structure the team in a way that I think is still operates at a high level, but also is a fun, friendly environment that our other drivers enjoy working in. So it's been a really fun challenge that I've enjoyed since we started it back in 2012.
Final question, you've been to Detroit before. If you could send a message to the world about Detroit, what would it be?
I've enjoyed my time here. Obviously, I won't lie, the majority of the time I've spent here is on Belle Isle, but that's part of the reason why I like it so much. It's such a neat park, and I'm really appreciative that we're able to have a race there. But it's really been fun to see the impact that the race has had on the town, specifically with the improvements they've been able to put into the park. I've really seen a tremendous amount of change for the positive, from getting the fountain going again, to just
everybody
getting
loves
things
that
nicer.
fountain.
Yeah, everybody. So it's nice for us when we're here, but I feel like as much of an inconvenience as it may be for some when we're there, it's making the park better for the other 11 months when we're not here.
Ed Carpenter, thanks so much for sitting down with us. Best of luck.
Thank you very much.
All right. So how tough do you think it is to drive one of these babies? All right, nice straightaway here. A little speed. I'm determined not to hit that wall that everybody else hit.
Good job.
And these curves don't give you a lot of warning, do they? Special thanks to all of my guests today. Make sure you come down and support the Detroit Grand Prix. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.